Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 77, Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. It is Sunday, a little bit after 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So, a lot of, surprisingly, not surprisingly, but a lot of noise this week. A lot of noise. A lot of, everybody's upset about the Lamar Jackson situation. We've gotten a little bit of the NBA MVP discussion has gone a little bit off the rails, so we'll try to get it back on the tracks here. Some people just can't seem to handle themselves. When it comes to this thing, we're still talking about sports, guys. Let's just keep that in mind. It's still sports. This is not earth shattering or nobody's being severely damaged. Lives are not at stake. And then we've got the quarterback stuff, and then NFL free agency is getting ready to start this week. So we're going to have a lot of noise, and especially with the NFL for the next month or so until the draft. So, but the first thing I wanted to address that I think I think it's more to get this out of the way, but I think we should talk about it. J.J. Redick and Kendrick Perkins got a little sideways this week on First Take, and this is one of those clips that it started in one place and then just branched off into 100 different directions. Some of them, I want to say some of them better than most, but I don't know that any of it's good. I just think it's what level of bad it is. So basically what happened was Kendrick Perkins was stating facts, apparently, that only three MVPs, or only three guys have won the NBA MVP award, which is a regular season award. Just to be clear about that, only three guys have won it in the last 30 years without being top 10 in scoring, and those are Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, and Nikola Jokic. All white guys, all foreign to the United States. And so, you wonder, when he says that, okay, where are you going with this? And of course, JJ Redick points out that Magic Johnson won it 3 times before that. And, he wasn't top 10 in scoring in any of those years. Right. So then, they kind of keep going, and it started from a debate about stat padding, where there's basically, Kendrick Perkins trying to make the argument that Jokic is getting a lot of extra stats, even though, they're 28-0 in the last 28 games. Jokic has had a triple double. They're undefeated. So yeah. I don't know about the stat padding argument, but I'm not sure what place that has in the discussion. And then at one point, and this was proven to be non-factual, was Kendrick Perkins saying 80% of the MVP voters are white. And so they kind of that kind of slid by, and nobody said anything after a few minutes. And then J.J. Redick kind of goes after Kendrick Perkins and basically says, "Look, he basically criticized First Take while being on First Take." So he said, I'm happy to be on First Take, but this is the problem with First Take, is that we create narratives that have no basis in reality. And, it's funny, JJ basically outed the entire show. Yeah, that's the entire point of the show, is to create narratives that have no basis in reality. So I don't understand the first part about, first, it's a privilege to be on First Take. Really? Yeah. So then he basically said, look, you're insinuating that the MVP voters are racist. And Kendrick Perkins just, some yelling and, screaming at each other ensues, and both trying to talk over each other, which is a classic First Take trope. And so then, and of course, everyone jumps on this, right? And my first reaction was, well, Kendrick Perkins, what are you trying to say then? You come out with this thing, you don't back it up, you don't really clearly state what you're getting at, and you just expect us to figure it out. So the first thing JJ Redick jumps on is you're saying the voters are racist, which I don't think that's what Kendrick was saying, even though Kendrick is not, I'll just say, he's not very eloquent on First Take. Kendrick Perkins, not the most articulate fellow, that's fine. He's a former player. I get it. But I don't think he was trying to say that the voters were racist. I think he was basically saying that there may be some racial bias involved in the MVP voting. And listen, I'm not going to take sides on this. My opinion is there's racial bias in everything. Everything we talk about, there's racial bias or racial misunderstanding. You could point that out in everything that we do. It doesn't mean that the MVP voters are wrong. It doesn't mean that they're not voting, based on what happens in the season. It doesn't mean that they don't get it. Just because, okay, there may be some racial bias and, that may be involved. Yeah, but so what? It's like telling us the sky is blue. Like, yeah, okay. And like, what's your point? So there's a little bit of racial bias in it. So, but regardless, unfortunately, some people on the right took what JJ said and ran with it as if he was trying to defend them, that's beyond disturbing. Again, second week in a row where it's like, if you agree with Clay Travis, like, you need to be worried. You should be concerned. If he's on your side, you need to find a new side. And that's kind of how I look at it. So, yeah. So basically, look, my overall take is the MVP, this should be fun. This should be a fun, entertaining discussion. We shouldn't be bringing things in that, while, there may be something to that, that's not really relevant to how we're deciding who the MVP is. I think any of three guys could win it. I think Jokic, Embiid, or Giannis, any of them could win it, and I'd be fine with it. I don't have a lot of complaints. I think Bill Simmons was right about this. He said, listen, this is going to be close. Somebody's going to win by a couple of votes, and we're going to act like it's some kind of declarative statement about things. And all the last 2 years, the votes were close. So it doesn't mean, Jokic is the best player in the league or any of that stuff. So I think we got a little sidetracked, and we need to get back to, guys, we're talking about basketball. We need to stop bringing this nonsense and saying that the MVP voters don't know what they're doing. There are plenty of flaws in the MVP vote. Okay, there's plenty of flaws in it. But as Chris Mannix was saying, these aren't the nuclear launch codes. This isn't that big a deal.
Yeah, that has kind of, the volume on the MVP thing has really gotten turned up in recent years. And some of it is, there's social media and we have all these debate shows, that's part of it. And then there's also not even just that, the way that this gets discussed, it becomes very inflammatory, and kind of over the top. Well, you can't, I don't want to award this guy the MVP because I haven't seen enough yet, and they're talking about the playoffs. So then it's like, well, okay, so then if you win the championship or you make the conference finals, then they can do that? Because that doesn't really make sense. There's players who win MVPs before they won a title. Giannis won 2 MVPs before he won a championship. So I don't really see what, Jordan won MVPs before he won titles. So I don't really see why that's and again, as you mentioned, it's a regular season award, which I feel like we need to keep repeating that. It is a regular season award. And let's also not create narratives about how people were thinking 40, 50 years ago about the MVP and then try to, make that like, well, they must have been thinking about it back then the same way they're thinking about it now. And it's like, there's no way that that's possible. Okay? The media landscape was completely different. I'm not saying people might not have had similar maybe discussions about it, and again, it's an award people vote on. So that's a very subjective thing. So to some people, they're going to be like, well, I can't vote that guy MVP because of blah, 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 blah. And other people go, well, no, I think he's the MVP because of, and of course now we have advanced metrics and apparently a lot of, well, I don't know about a lot of, but at least part of why Jokic has won has been advanced metrics. So there is kind of a, with some people there's going to be a pushback against that. And then people are going to do the whole, well, he's not the best player in the league, which that's not, you don't have to be the best player in the league to win the MVP. And that's right. It's not just like that's been a few times, like that's happened a bunch of times. So it's a subjective thing, and people need to, you're right, people need to kind of calm down. It's one of those things. I do think that people should when we're talking about historically great players and trying to rate them, we need to be careful about saying, well, this guy only won this many MVPs. I do think that's something we need to be cautious of, because LeBron could have won. He's won 4. You could make an argument he should have won 6 or 7 or something. I mean, like, it's that, but other people won. I'm not going to take credit. It's the same thing with, like, quibbling about how many rings a guy has, because there's so many different factors that go into it. And also, look, if people want to criticize the NBA media for being too narrative-based about this award, I can get behind that, because it does become, literally the year starts off and then they kind of just build this narrative usually. Like that happened with Giannis, that happened with Russell Westbrook, that happened with LeBron, that happened with James Harden, that happened with Kobe, that happened, that's just, you can go down the list, there's kind of a narrative that gets built, and then people usually fall within that. Now, I think the advanced metrics maybe change things a little bit, but yeah, I agree with you. We should kind of turn the volume down on this, because it's really, yeah, this guy won the MVP, and again, it's a regular season award. It's not, and if the guy plays poorly in the playoffs, I'm not going to sit there and kill the guy because he won the MVP. Like, oh, he didn't deserve it, which is what Nick Wright has been doing for like 2 years now. So, and plus and I think we talked about this last week, the three times in a row thing, I don't really have a problem with that. People are like, oh, well, you can't do that for him. Well, okay, well, who are you supposed to do it for? Like, right. There's years where a guy doesn't win the MVP a third time because you go, oh, well, it wasn't as good. He didn't have a year that was better than the previous 2 years he had. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean he didn't have a great year. We're just comparing him to himself, and then that player becomes his own worst enemy when it comes to trying to win the MVP award again. So, and that's kind of ridiculous. So, a lot of this, again, it's a subjective award. It's like we were talking about this earlier this week. It's like the college football college football playoff. You're never going to get complete agreement on this because it's a subjective thing.
Right. So, that's why there's some flaws in the award, because the media is voting on it. Yes. So there is going to be inherent bias and flaws in it, whatever you want that bias to be, whether it's racially motivated, what part of the country you live in, how old you are, what basketball you like to see played, whether you're in more favor of stats or more favor of the eye test. So, yeah, we're taking that all into account, and we're putting it into this subjective poll. It's like I was saying to you when, the first college football playoff rankings came out last fall, and TCU was not in the top 4, and everybody's like, this is disrespectful to TCU, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's not disrespectful. We're doing the best we can with this flawed system. It's not a perfect thing. And, the way that rings culture has really just kind of infiltrated this, I kind of think the stats people had kind of taken over a little bit when Westbrook won it. And now I feel like we want to, keep the stats in, but we also want to be mindful of that. And then Giannis wins it twice, and everybody's shitting on him because he doesn't win the title. And then they win the title, and now nobody says anything anymore. It's all of the concerns that we had, even though they're still there. Like, he's not a significantly better player than he was 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
But this is where the rings thing just drives me absolutely insane. It's like, I'm sorry, the MVP is not the best player. That's not how this award works. That's not how it's ever worked.
And by the way, even if the award was the best player, you'd have arguments about that.
Exactly.
Who? Okay, well, just for fun, who do you think the best player in the league is?
The best player in the league. I would pick Giannis.
Yeah, I think I could probably go with that. Yeah, because I don't. I guess you could get with like Luka, or you could put, you put Embiid there. You could put Jokic there too. I kind of feel
right, and everybody gets upset because Jokic might win the MVP, and whenever he plays against Embiid kicks his butt. Yeah, he plays against some of these other great players, and they're dominant. So it's just I think we need to relax on this. I feel bad that if Embiid doesn't win this year, I feel bad that he might never win one.
Yeah.
He could just because he could have won it last year. It was as close as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
And he didn't win it, and it doesn't look like so far he's going to win this year. But listen, we don't know. When they did that straw poll, the Milwaukee had not gone on the 16-game winning streak yet. We don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, I think we need to take it easy. And let's not start bringing things in that there's no way to. You can't. What's the point of talking about the racial element? We're not going to solve it. We're not going to explain it. There's no way to prepare. To prepare for it or legitimize how much it matters and how much it doesn't. So let's stick to basketball, and let's try not to make this contentious. It's still a game.
Yeah.
So. Moving on, we had, the other thing this week that everyone got all up in arms about that, everybody needs to take a deep breath, let things settle a little bit, and let's see how this goes, is Lamar Jackson was given the non-exclusive franchise tag, which basically means we're dating, but we're not ready to get married yet.
Yeah, what it basically means, according to a lot of people in the media, is that the Ravens have absolutely no respect for Lamar Jackson, and they're just doing him dirty. That's what it really means.
Yeah, back to the respect argument. It's just there's just no respect for Lamar Jackson here. Look, okay, I can't stand this where people are acting like he hasn't been offered anything, like he hasn't been offered a contract and they're lowballing him. Nothing could be further from the truth. They've offered him 5 years, $250 million. Now, how much they've offered it guaranteed, I don't know. First I heard 130, then I thought it was 180, then I thought it was 150. I don't know what the amount is.
Right.
That's what the debate is. The debate is not, we don't think you're good enough to get a huge contract. No, we do. Like, Baltimore is on board. They would like him to be their franchise quarterback. Okay? But they're between a rock and a hard place. What is Baltimore supposed to do? Well, just give him it all guaranteed. Okay. Well, the problem with that is, like, owners have to fund a part of this and put money into an escrow account. Not every owner can do that. I know they all have lots of money, but not everybody can do that. And, look, they don't, teams don't want to give out guaranteed contracts. Now, that being said, it's coming. It's coming. The quarterbacks are going to start getting guaranteed contracts because of where we are in the sport right now. You have to have one. Like I was telling you earlier, you cannot pay enough for a franchise quarterback. There's no amount of money that you can say is too high, because if you don't have one, you're done. Like, you have no shot. Like, you might as well, your ceiling is, and I know everybody's going to talk to me about, well, look at San Francisco and look at Philadelphia. Okay, those are outliers. Those are really smart, well-run teams that have put together a perfect roster, okay? And Jalen Hurts also played at an MVP level this year. So
yeah,
you can't say
awesome in the Super Bowl, except for he was awesome.
Right. You can't say, oh, well, you don't really need a quarterback. You don't need a great quarterback to win. Yeah, you do. Like, that's where it is. You want to win the Super Bowl and contend, that's where the sport is. It's basically the same as the NBA. You have to have one, or you're going to be irrelevant. So I think, so I defend both sides. I think the Ravens are doing the right thing. They're like, hey, if somebody else makes a better offer, we'll have the opportunity to match it. And I understand Lamar feeling disrespected. I get it. If he feels disrespected and it's personal, I understand that. But that doesn't mean the Ravens are being disrespectful, right? There's a difference between Lamar Jackson feeling disrespected and the Ravens actually being disrespectful. Those are two different things. Baltimore has said the right things at every turn. You're not hearing anything in Baltimore about they're concerned about him and they don't like his attitude or any of that stuff. You're not hearing any of that. And I defend Lamar. Get as much money as you possibly can. If that's what you want to do, I have zero problem with it. You play your cards, and this is what drives me nuts about the fans. Sometimes we want the player to play, and we want to see them play, so we end up on the side of management. We end up rooting for these teams to be stingy. Why? Like the team doesn't care about you. I guarantee you the players care more about the fans than the teams do. So
right.
I am more pro player on a lot of these things than I used to be. I completely understand where Baltimore's coming from, and I think guaranteed contracts are coming.
Yeah, eventually. Is Lamar going to be the? Well, I guess okay. So Deshaun Watson got one. Is Lamar going to be the second guy? Because I kind of feel like the second guy the second quarterback that gets it, that's going to open up the floodgates. But this is one of those topics where I'm glad that we do like a weekly podcast because we can watch the reaction to something over multiple days, and then sort of your opinion forms rather than just forming your opinion just based off one day and like one a few different things that you hear. So one of the things I wanted to as I was thinking about this, I wanted to point out is, look, Baltimore does not have to do anything. Okay? They don't have to give him a fully guaranteed contract. They didn't have to offer him the contract that they offered him, whatever it is and whatever the guaranteed money is. They don't have to sign him to the exclusive franchise tag. They decided to sign him to the non-exclusive franchise tag. They don't necessarily have to match an offer that if an offer gets made for Lamar Jackson, they don't necessarily have to match it. They're free to do what they feel is in their best interests. Okay? Now, we can disagree with it, or we can think that they should have done X, Y, and Z differently. That's fine. But, they have a right to do what they want to do, just as Lamar Jackson has a right to do what he wants to do. So it's like you're saying, I can see both sides of it. I defend the Ravens on this, because look, people are like, oh, he won the MVP. Yes, he won the MVP like 4 years ago, 4 years ago. He hasn't played well in the playoffs. He's been hurt the past 2 years. It's a very unique offense with him where, we kind of feel like there's limitations to it. We don't really know, can you win the Super Bowl this way? Because we've never seen it. So, I can see their side of it where they don't want to totally give him all the guaranteed money. And is some of this about we're pissed off at what the Browns did? Because, and this is the other point that gets kind of lost. It's not just the guaranteed contract, I don't think. Or, well, maybe it really is. But I think at least part of it is that they gave a guaranteed contract to him, okay, given all the crap that he was going through. And it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like you said, eventually it's going to happen. Quarterbacks are going to all have like guaranteed contracts. But I'm trying to think of the other stuff I had on this. I mean, yeah, they're both sides are free to sort of do what they want to do. And again, it's like, well, you're disrespecting Lamar Jackson. You had 2 years to work out a deal. Well, before the Deshaun Watson contract, they were trying to work out a deal, and I don't know what the holdup was. And then they were trying to work it out after the Deshaun Watson deal. And again, they offered him a really big contract. The quibble is just with the guaranteed money. Okay? So to act like, oh, they didn't offer him anything, and this is just, they're just being totally disrespectful. No, they're not being totally disrespectful. They offered him a long-term deal. Okay? They clearly want him to be the quarterback there. But the disrespect angle and some of that other stuff, I just, you're just supposed to give him whatever he wants. And I pointed this out to you. It's kind of a difference between, because Colin Cowherd seems to be more on the side of the Ravens, right? Even though he said I can kind of understand what Lamar's doing. Nick Wright seems to be more on the side of the Ravens, or not the Ravens, on Lamar Jackson. Like, what are the Ravens doing? They have to get rid of him. There's no way he can come back, which is totally extreme and ridiculous. That's way too far on one side. But you'll notice Colin Cowherd, I think, has better takes on the NFL. Nick Wright clearly, and again, Colin likes the NBA, but Nick Wright clearly, as much into the NBA, if not more into the NBA than the NFL. So his take is more pro player, and the NBA is a much more pro player league. Whereas in the NFL, the way the labor disputes have gone, I guess you could say that the owners they hold more sway over the players, especially in comparison to the way the NBA is. So I do think that's that's kind of interesting. I don't, you know, I do want to be careful. I don't want to be totally pro-management, but I don't agree with this idea that, like, and you see this in the NBA all the time. Well, when this player demands a trade, you have to trade him. Well, no, not necessarily. You know, and I think people are trying to do that. It's like, oh, well, you know, he wants this, you need to give it to him. No, you're allowed to advocate for your interests. You know, whatever those interests are. If you don't want to give him a guaranteed contract, you want to kind of hold back on a couple of years, you know, that's up to you. You don't have to just give him whatever he wants. And I think the only other point I wanted to make was, see if I can read. Go ahead, but I'll see if I can't remember what.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to. Yeah, I get everything that you're saying there, and in the NBA, it's just much easier because there's a max contract, so you know this is the most he can make, and that's it. And there's no franchise tag, which listen, there are a couple things that I really think the NFL, the Players Union, needs to do something about, and the franchise tag is number one. This is why the franchise tag is not a good thing in my opinion. I don't think this is good for leagues. I think this is just, especially in the sport where you get injured and your health is the most important thing and is at risk way more in this sport than any of the other major ones. And this is a sport where we're allowing people to give people 1-year deals and they don't have a choice. Like, this is to me where I think this is where it loses it. The franchise tag is just complete bullshit. Now, if there was no franchise tag, what would the Ravens do? Well, why can't there just be restricted free agency? Like, why can't it just be, all right, if somebody wants Lamar Jackson, they sign him to an offer sheet. If we want to match it, we can keep him. Why can't it be that simple? I think this franchise tag thing gets everybody pissed off, and I'm not sure what the hell the point is. You know, they're like, oh, well, we'll get, you know, I understand you want to keep a guy a year and not allow him to leave, but I just feel like that's bad for everybody. I don't feel like it, you know, I know it worked out for Kirk Cousins. I get it. And I know Dak Prescott, he still got the deal anyway. And Lamar's still going to get the deal anyway, I think. So then why are we wasting our time with this franchise tag nonsense?
Well, and okay, so I just thought of the other thing I was going to say. So Joe Banner was on Rich Eisen's show, and he made a good point that, you know, Lamar Jackson it's basically, from what we understand, is quibbling about like the last 2 years of a 5-year contract being guaranteed.
Right.
Okay. And he pointed out, he's like, well, Lamar's 25, 26, so the odds of him not finishing out that contract are slim. Even if he gets injured, the way medical advances are, you know, he can probably come back. Okay. So from what we understand, I guess, is that the first 3 years were guaranteed. So it's not like, you know, and he pointed out, he's like, look, you know, for the most likely, Lamar would get everything in that most of, if not all of that contract, even the parts that aren't guaranteed. Okay?
Right.
So, you know, I understand him kind of quibbling about this, but, you know, people are so focused on, oh, well, this is so risky by the Ravens. Well, this is risky by Lamar Jackson, too. You know, because he could have been playing, you know, he could have been playing, I mean, maybe he could have been playing this past year on the new contract. I don't know exactly how that works, but yeah, so now it's like, okay, well, if you don't get a deal done now, are you going to play under the franchise tag? Okay. And then if you still can't get a deal done, you'd have to play under the franchise tag again. What if you keep getting hurt? What if the offer they're going to make after those two franchise tag years are done is not as good as the offer they would have made beforehand because you're older and you've got more injuries? You know. Now again, I don't think, you know, some people are pointing out, well, you know, their relationship's done. There's no way you can go back there. No, I don't agree with that. What's he going to do? Not play for $32 million? Like, really? He's not going to play? Like, that doesn't look good. You know. So again, it is a risk by both parties. Let's not gloss over that. Be like, oh, well, this is just ridiculous. They need to pay him and blah, 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 blah. You know, look, Lamar Jackson is not Patrick Mahomes. Okay. He's not, I mean, you know, he's won a lot of games, and that's why the Ravens want him. That's why they offered him a long-term deal. Okay.
But to your point, Patrick Mahomes' contract isn't fully guaranteed either.
Exactly.
Like this, like everyone points that out. Well, he got injured the last 2 years, and he's not the best quarterback in the league. Those two arguments to me have nothing to do with it. Like he's going to get a contract. It's just a matter of when and who's he going to get it from.
Right.
You know, so this is not, they're not lowballing him. That's not what's happening here. Like they're offering him a contract at the top of the market. You know, so
we should speak to the one more point we need to make, the collusion thing that people have been trotting out there. Now look, I kind of compare this to when people say a game is fixed because there were bad calls. Okay, you got bad calls, but you haven't proven the other part of this. You know, the whole meeting in secret and being like, "Yeah, make sure this team wins." You don't have any evidence of that. You're just going off the one thing. You know, that's not that. There's obviously a correlation between that, but correlation does not equal causation. So, you know, and I kind of look at the collusion thing like this. Look, I don't have any evidence of them colluding. Okay, now. Have owners expressed that they were unhappy with Deshaun Watson getting the guaranteed contract? Yes. I think at least that's partially because of what Deshaun Watson was involved in, you know, all those lawsuits. But also, you know, they didn't want to give up the guaranteed contract. Okay?
Well,
that's not
and remember.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's evidence of they've expressed their opinion on the issue, which they're free to do. But you don't have any evidence of them meeting secretly and being like, we don't want to do this. Now, the other thing is all those teams that came out and said, we're not interested. You know, that may be bullshit. They may just be saying that now, and things might change in the future. They may be kind of waiting around. Also, you have to understand, like, if you already have a quarterback that you've got under contract, if you're going to go after Lamar Jackson, you got to get him. Plus, you got to give up 2 first-round picks. This isn't a free agency thing where you can just sign him to a contract. You got to give up 2 first-round picks. So, you know, and then you got to consider, like, if we already have a quarterback and we put ourselves out there, what are the Ravens willing to match? What kind of offer do we have to make to get him? Do we have to pay way above what the Ravens would pay? You know, and then that becomes like, well, do we really want to do that? You know, again, he might get traded. We'll see. You know, but let's not just, you know, just because it hasn't happened right away doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to. You know, there's all kinds of considerations that I'm sure owners and GMs have about these kind of things. So, yeah, the idea of collusion, I just, you know, is there collusion in the NFL? Yeah, possibly. Was there collusion with Colin Kaepernick? Maybe. You know, I don't know. I mean, they didn't get a trial because I think the NFL didn't want any, you know, they didn't want discovery and they didn't want a bunch of stuff coming out. But, yeah, it's just, we're making these allegations and we don't really have evidence of it. There's suspicion. I get suspicion. Okay, fine. But, you know, we need to kind of slow down on that. I do think there's an aspect of this where the owners don't want to give up the guaranteed contracts. And that may be part of this. But some of this is, look, people are like, I don't understand why some of these teams don't want it. It's like, okay, look, you have to design an offense a certain way around Lamar Jackson, and some of these teams may not have that. They may not be willing to go all in on a quarterback like that, which the Ravens actually have. They need to get better receivers, but they actually have gone all in on Lamar Jackson the way that he plays. But some of these other teams, they may just be like the Dolphins are like, well, you know, if we go after it and we don't get him, you know, we still, granted, I don't think they should be relying on Tua, but they still kind of think, okay, like people have been talking about the Detroit Lions. I mean, they were pretty good last year. You know, why do you just want to change it up again? You want to kind of start over with a different quarterback right now? The Browns was different with Deshaun Watson. They didn't have a quarterback. They were done with Baker Mayfield. They needed a quarterback. So,
right.
Yeah, I just, the collusion thing just kind of, it gets annoying. It's like, guys, you're pushing this way too hard.
Well, yeah, I know. I think the collusion thing is ridiculous. I think that is it's such an easy thing to say because it sounds sexy when people say it. Anytime you start spouting conspiracy, it's going to get clicks and it's going to get attention, even though there's no truth to it at all. Like, first of all, the teams that said they didn't want Lamar Jackson, they could be just doing that because they don't want to seem like they're trying to get rid of the quarterback that they have, number one, or they want to seem like they're going in their own direction. If they're going to be into Lamar Jackson, they're probably not going to publicize it. right?
Yeah.
If you're Atlanta probably doesn't want to put out there that, oh yeah, we're going after this guy when they have a young quarterback already. They probably, and I think the same thing with the Dolphins. They don't want to just jump right out there and go, because it looks bad. When you've said all along that you believe in your quarterback and then you do that, does it mean they won't go back behind the scenes and try to get him? Maybe they could. The only way this would be collusion is if Baltimore was not offering him a contract and nobody else was either.
Right.
Then we could talk about collusion. Okay? But that's not the case here. Like that is absolutely not the case. And listen, there's 7 or 8 teams that have a quarterback that are good with. There's 7 or 8 teams that, Lamar probably wouldn't go to anyway. So, no, there's only going to be a handful of teams who might have a chance at getting him regardless. So,
people are kind of drawing the conclusion like, oh, well, they didn't go after him right away. It's like, I think there's multiple teams that would like to have him. Okay?
Right.
That maybe they won't for a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't have the picks. Maybe they're rebuilding phase, so he wouldn't go there. Maybe there's a variety of reasons why. Just to assume, oh, well, it's collusion. No, I mean he could end up getting traded. I still think he's going to be playing on Baltimore Week 1 next year, but it could still happen.
No, listen, we have until July, right? Teams like you said, the 2 first-round picks, teams may not want to do that, even though I think that's ridiculous, but they might not want to do it. If you make an offer to Lamar Jackson, you have to wait 5 days and have your cap space completely tied up, so you can't go after any other free agents when you do that. So that's a bit of an issue too. So yeah, I just think that the whole collusion thing is insanity.
Yeah.
So it's just people trying to come up with nonsense to get attention.
And let me just point this out, Lamar. I hope you get paid. I really do. Okay, you've won a ton of games. I hope you get a long-term deal. I think you will eventually, but I hope you do. So I'm not. I don't want to be coming out totally on the side of owners because NFL owners, there's a variety of reasons why they're fucked up. So I don't want to act like I'm coming out on the side of ownership.
No, I think franchise quarterbacks like at this level should have guaranteed contracts. They're not only asked to play well, they're the face of your franchise. They're asked to be the leader. They're asked to do all this stuff in the offseason to help the team and the organization make everybody else better, right? It's not just go out there and throw the ball really well. That's not what quarterback is in the NFL, especially now. And they're beyond valuable. So I think I think their contract should be guaranteed. This franchise tag bullshit infuriates me. I think it's ridiculous the way that players are treated in the NFL. Like, this is absolute nonsense. The players should have fought harder at this at the negotiating table, and they didn't for whatever. They have their reasons, I'm sure. But I think it's ridiculous, and I think that's where the league is going. It's just going to be who's the first to do it. And the Cleveland Browns, by the way, they picked up the contract from Houston. They weren't the ones that originally wrote the contract. Deshaun Watson signed that in Houston, and then Cleveland came in over the top and said, "Oh, you need an extra $50 million guaranteed? All right, fine, we'll do it." They're making it sound like Cleveland was just crazy one day and just started writing checks. It's like, no, like you said, they needed a quarterback. They decided to go all in. That owner's a little out of his mind. And that happens in sports. Owners do stuff. They pay guys that nobody else would pay. That's what happens. There's 32 teams. There are 32 separate businesses. So, all right. So that's quite enough of that. I think we've beaten that horse to death.
Yeah.
So this is something that I want to talk about that's annoying me. I'm really tired of people acting like, oh, I don't want to give up a first round pick for that quarterback. Oh, I don't want, like Jason McIntyre on Cowherd is going, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. So let me get this straight. You don't want a quarterback?
So you want
really?
Mike White and the corpse of Joe Flacco? Is that
what are we doing? Like, I'm sorry. What are you guys, all you guys especially, and by the way, I'm talking about you and I too. Like, we're Dolphins fans. All you guys that don't have quarterbacks, quit fucking whining about, oh my God, we might have to give up a first round pick, or oh my God, I don't want Aaron Rodgers. He's a pain in the ass. Oh, geez. Really? Like, how is it having no quarterback? Tell me what it's like, because I don't understand what planet you people on. Okay, as I said before, you can't pay enough for a legitimate franchise quarterback. That's the lifeblood of the sport. Okay? At the beginning of every NFL season, there's haves and have-nots. You have one or you have no shot. That's how it works. So this idea that yes, the Jets should get Aaron Rodgers. There's a reason they sent the owner and everybody out to California to try to talk him into signing with the Jets. Of course they should get Aaron Rodgers, okay? And of course all of these teams should give up 2 first-round picks for Lamar Jackson. They're first-round picks. Half the players in the first round don't amount to anything. They're useless.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like I get it. Like I get it if you want to draft somebody, you know, there's good players there. I'm not saying you can't. The draft picks aren't a good option, but I'm just saying are you kidding me? Is there a first-round quarterback that's as good as Aaron Rodgers? Hell no.
Yeah, no.
The Jets are ready to try to go to the playoffs next year. Do I think Aaron Rodgers puts them in the Super Bowl? I heard this argument. Bill Simmons was like, "I'm not making this trade unless we're gonna be in the Super Bowl, unless I think we're Super Bowl contenders." Well, what kind of bullshit is that? There's no quarterback out there that's getting you to the Super Bowl. There's no guaranteed, we get this guy, we're going to the Super Bowl. No, the Jets, if you watch the Jets last season, they need competent quarterback play. That's what they need. The quarterback torpedoed them out of 4 or 5 games last year. They would have won. They would have been in the playoffs. They need competent quarterback play. Now you could come to me and say, "Yeah, but we don't need to pay Aaron Rodgers $50 million. Let's get Jimmy Garoppolo for 25." Yeah, but you're saying that like you think you're going to get Jimmy Garoppolo. You don't know that. This might be your only chance. Like you're acting like, "Oh, well, we'll go get Garoppolo." Yeah, but what if Garoppolo's already talked to Josh McDaniels and they already know he's going there? Yeah. What if Garoppolo's already decided where he's going to go? You can't fuck around. Like, and especially in the Jets case, Robert Saleh is trying to keep his job. The general manager trying to keep his job. Like, they have to make the playoffs this year. So this nonsense, and it drives me nuts that the Dolphins are like, "No, we'll just go with Tua. We've been super aggressive for the last 2 years. Our team is ready to win. We're trying to win now, but we're not going to go bother trying to get Derek Carr or try to get Lamar Jackson or bother with." I mean, it's incredible to me. It's the only position that matters. And yet, I don't want to give up a first-round pick for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are trying to – seriously, Jet fans are sitting there going, "Can we get Rodgers and not give up a first-round pick?" Like, they're worried about the fucking draft picks. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, did you want to segue to the Dolphins?
Well, let's just talk about Aaron Rodgers for a second, and then we'll jump on – we'll shit on the Dolphins for a second.
Well, I will say this. I was convinced Aaron Rodgers was going back to Green Bay. I'm kind of losing faith in that now because I've seen tons of reporting that the Packers are just done. They want to move on. Like they're really ready to trade him, and it's different from the last couple years. So that leads me to, and apparently from what they're saying, they like where Jordan Love is. So that to me kind of means they want him out. You know, because they want to kind of start over, sort of like they did with Aaron Rodgers when they were getting rid of Brett Favre. So, you know, I guess maybe he goes there. I don't know. I mean, maybe he tries to go somewhere. I don't know who else is going to pursue him, but maybe the Jets have obviously been hardcore into this because they need a quarterback. They're really desperate. I don't know if some other team would. As far as, you know, Aaron Rodgers going back to Green, I'm like, God, I mean, for the sake of this podcast, I think that would be great because that would be fucking interesting. Because clearly,
it'd be more interesting if he goes to play in New York.
Yeah,
him playing in New York would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that gives me pause is that I think Aaron Rodgers loves this attention.
Oh, dude,
I think
are you kidding?
Loves this. He loves that everyone's talking about him. Everybody wants to know the answer. He's making everybody wait. He loves this shit. I saw the report on reading ESPN earlier today that a decision's coming. Aaron Rodgers is saying, decision's coming soon. You know, it's like he's literally like. So I could totally, like I told you, I could totally see Aaron Rodgers stringing everybody along and then going, No, I'm going back to Green Bay. I could totally see him pulling that turncoat shit on everybody. I could totally see him doing it, and I would laugh my ass off.
Well,
I think
the phrase "coming soon." I mean, what does that even mean, really? I mean, if you go to the movies and you see a preview for, like, the next Mission Impossible movie, coming soon. Yeah, in July. That's, like, 4 months from now. What the hell does that even mean? Like, decision coming soon. He's like, before he went into the darkness retreat, he's like, yeah, after that I'll be closer to a decision. He still hasn't decided. So, like, what does that even mean? Like, why would people take that and be like, oh, my God, I do think it's pretty funny, though. Jet fans in the media are just like, Greeny and Rich Eisen, they just keep checking their phones all the time. They're just like updating, like, he's made a decision yet.
I think it's right up Aaron's alley. He got everybody to fly out to California to meet with him and kiss his ass. Like, I think if he could get 2 or 3 more teams to do that, he would totally do it. But I think that the writing's on the wall now. Green Bay, I think, wants to be rid of him, and I completely understand. But like we were talking about this earlier, like Green Bay has fucked up this situation. Like, what are you doing? Like, why did you give him that contract extension last year? Why did you do that? Just trade him. Like, it's so ridiculous for Green Bay to continue to go back and forth on this thing and let Aaron do this to them after Favre did it to them 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable for them to just allow this to go on. Like, Green Bay should have traded him to Denver last year and been done with it. I don't know what they're afraid of. Like, this team isn't going to win the Super Bowl. And now I think what happened is not making the playoffs has emboldened them to be like, oh, well, screw it then. If we're not making the playoffs, then I don't care about how great Aaron is. And I think they've finally, it took them this long, but it's like, really? Like, and now the Jets are going to have to, pay his crazy salary for the next year or two. But listen, you got to win. Like, I understand. I think there's rare exceptions. There's usually 2 or 3 teams in the NFL where I go, okay, let's wait. We're on a rebuilding track. Let's wait a year or two, whatever. Most teams in the NFL win now. You got to win now. Like, enough of this. Like, you got to win now. And if you don't, you're going to get fired. And I think that's the way that it should be.
Well, yeah. And then as far as the Packers, like, yeah, what are you guys afraid of? Because, like, Green Bay, it's not some major, huge, they've had fans of that team. I mean, the fans are really devoted to that team. They've been devoted to that team for decades, okay? Like, if you change quarterbacks, they'll just adjust. This is not New York. This is not Dallas. They'll kind of move on. I mean, was there backlash when they didn't bring Brett Favre back and they went with Aaron Rodgers? I mean, I'm trying to think back. Maybe there was a little bit, but it's Green Bay. They just kind of move on.
No,
it's not. They're not going to crush you for making a
change.
But
I think the fans are at this point. They're tired of Aaron too. I think that there's enough. And by the way, when the Favre thing, I don't know if you remember, but they basically, like, they agreed to separate from each other, and Favre was going to retire. And then 3 months later, Favre's like, no, I want to play. And Green Bay's like, no. Like, we're not doing this now. We've already committed to Aaron. We've done, this is what we've done. And I think a similar thing is kind of happening here. I think Green Bay would like Aaron to just take care of this on his own, so they can just go, yeah, he wanted to leave, and just get rid of him.
Yeah.
I think that's what they would love to happen, but I don't think Aaron's going to make it easy on him. I don't think this is going to be easy. I think this might drag out a little while, and I think Aaron's going to love every minute of it. Anyway, yeah, so the Dolphins, so they traded a 3rd round pick this year for Jalen Ramsey from the Rams. Jalen Ramsey 3 years ago, awesome player, love to have him. Jalen Ramsey last couple years, not as good, and he's kind of expensive. Yeah. So, as you stated earlier, I think you summed it up perfectly. Dolphins all dressed up and nowhere to go. You know what? I don't know what. It's the most confusing thing. One of the most confusing things I've ever seen in sports. Chris Greer has the general manager job for 7 years. They make the playoffs one time. In 2016, his first year he was the GM, they make the playoffs one time. Most of his draft picks have been pretty bad, has missed over and over again, And then we get to last offseason, and all of a sudden, okay, all the chips in the middle. He's the guy at the poker table that's been sitting there playing, the minimum every hand, and then all of a sudden pushes all his chips in. We're trading for Tyreek Hill. We're trading for Bradley Chubb. We're signing this guy. We're signing that guy. This is going to be our team. We're bringing Mike McDaniel in. We're getting the running backs from San Francisco. We're doing this. We're doing, making all these moves. Now he's getting Jalen Ramsey.
All you got is a pair of threes. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Exactly.
Why are you pushing all the chips in the middle? You got crap.
Exactly. Right. This is the hand. This is now you want to do this? It's like, where was this for 7 years? What are you doing? Like, this is so strange. And you're right. Like, yeah, it's great. You did all this stuff. We have nice players now. Great. Quarterback's still the issue. If you don't fix that problem, and by the way, I don't mean Tua the person, but the position itself is a problem. Tua is up and down. He's all over the place when he does play. He's missing he misses games every single year. Last 5 years, 3 years in the NFL, 2 years in college, he's hurt every single year. I know everybody wants to pin it down to concussions, but to me, that's just one injury that he has.
Yeah.
Like, the injuries continue to happen, and then they have Teddy Bridgewater as a backup. He can't stay healthy either. So it's just like it's great. Like, you did all this stuff, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's like if you had a house, right, and it's got really nice window treatments and crown molding, and the kitchen's really awesome, but there's a big, huge crack in the foundation.
Well, that's like and this is sort of local, but in the West Palm Beach area, there's, if you go on like Zillow or Realtor.com, you'll see like these nice houses, and then you look at the neighborhood and you're like, oh God, I don't want to live there. It's like, yeah, you did all this stuff and you flipped the house. It looks fucking great. But, if you walk outside, you're like, I don't want to fucking be here.
Yeah. Like, it's lipstick on a pig. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're dressing it up. It looks fantastic, but you're not going to win games with this. Like, it's like he's made all these moves and the Dolphins are going to win 8 or 9 games.
Yeah.
8 or 9 games.
That's my thing. I'm like, my prediction for them this year is probably similar to what I predicted last year. I said 7-10 last year. They ended up finishing 9-8. But I mean, I was 2 games off. So yeah, I'm kind of like you're 8-8, 9-8, 8-9, something like that, because Tua's going to miss games. Now again, we'll see who their backup quarterback is, because say they go get like Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz for a few games could actually be pretty good. Right. I don't know if that's really possible, but, depending on who the backup is, and, like I was telling you yesterday, I think the Dolphins' season really comes down to, the really good teams win games in November and December. The Dolphins aren't going to do that, okay? So the Dolphins have to win a lot in September and October to make up for all the games they're going to lose in November and December, okay? If they start off the year well, then maybe they make the playoffs again, If they start off the year poorly, then it can kind of spiral out of control, and you get an injury, and then the backup quarterback isn't that good. You could win 5 games. I mean, like, that's possible. Is it possible that the Dolphins run the ball really well, and their defense under Vic Fangio is better, and maybe they win 11 games? That's possible, too, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't. That kind of depends on what the schedule is, and that depends on how many decent games you get from Tua. Are you just going to get like 4 or 5 decent games? Are you going to get 6 maybe? Is the backup quarterback going to be okay for the few games that Tua misses? Like, I don't know. So they're all dressed up with they're not winning the Super Bowl. I don't think they can. Right. I don't think they can win a playoff game.
Well, and by the way, making the playoffs to me is not something to cheer for anymore. 14 teams make the playoffs now. Almost half the NFL makes the playoffs. Making the playoffs is like great. Okay, you had a nice season. It doesn't do anything for me. You have no chance to advance to contend for anything. So it's like, it's great. I'm glad you did all this stuff, but it's all going to be useless. And by the time, by the time they fix the quarterback position, all these really good high-priced players they have won't be good anymore.
Yeah.
So it just, the NFL, things do not last in the NFL. They just don't. Very rarely.
I'll defend the Dolphins from this perspective. Yeah, things don't last, so I guess just go all in, you know.
Except at the most important position.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So
like, we're going all in on all these nice things around, around the sides, but we don't have the one thing that you need, that everybody knows that you need. And it's like, no, we're gonna give him the 5th-year option. It's like, listen, I'm not saying the Dolphins. The Dolphins probably had no chance to get Derek Carr. Derek Carr probably was going to go to New Orleans anyway,
right?
Because he knows the coach, because Dennis Allen and him, he's played for him before. That probably was a done deal. Wherever Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go is probably already a done deal. Like, if anybody who thinks nobody's figured this stuff out already, like, come on. That's probably already done. So I'm not sure where, that being said, I'm not sure where the Dolphins were supposed to go. But for them to not even make an offer for Lamar Jackson, it's just flat out insulting. Like, just make an offer and see what happens. I mean, you're probably not going to get him, but at least put your name in the hat. I mean, put your name in, So anyway, yeah, it's going to be, it's going to be another lackluster season. Let me just put this out there for, because I was thinking about this.
The nightmare scenario, if you're of the perspective that we have about the Dolphins, okay? The nightmare scenario is the Dolphins make the playoffs again. Tua has a year that's basically like last year. And then maybe they run the ball a little better this year, and that helps them win a couple more games or something. They get beat in the playoffs, whatever, and then you give them and look, you can't get around whatever the going rate is for, a long-term contract for a quarterback. You're going to have to pay if you want to give the guy a long-term deal. So you're going to end up, so if they decide to sign him, you're going to have to pay Tua $45 million a year to play 12 games a year, 13 games a year, and be average.
And listen, his career could be over in a few months. Like, that's how this is going. We could be sitting here in November and be like, yeah, that's it. Tua's done. Like, that's where we are. And I'm not advocating we should decide what happens with Tua's career, but it's a possibility. Like, you just gave a 5th-year option to a guy whose NFL career might be over later this year. So it's like, I understand the Dolphins did it because of financial reasons. I get it. $22 million for a starting quarterback is not bad. Like, if you have a legit starting quarterback at $22 million, that's a good deal, because otherwise you're paying out the nose. You saw what Daniel Jones just got.
Yeah.
So let's not, we won't waste too much more time on the Dolphins, but yeah, it's, I mean, listen, if the Dolphins were last in rushing last year, if they could get themselves into the top 20 in rushing, that's a good team. Like, it's a good team.
I don't want to give the impression that they suck. No, they don't suck. But yeah, it's just, it's like, guys, I won't go on too long. I'll just say this. It's like, there's a ceiling here, and I just want to dispel this narrative right now. Okay. Well, Tua's great. It's just he gets hurt. No, he gets hurt, and he's average at best. Okay.
Right.
That's it. Average at best, or below average. Some games. So anyway,
it totally depends on what game you see him play. As I said last year, he played about 12 games. He was really good in 4 of them. He was kind of average in 4 of them, and bad in 4 of them. So it just depends on, you could spin any Tua narrative that you want. You could say he should retire right now because he keeps getting injured. You could say, he's an average guy. He can win some games. He might get you to the playoffs. You could tell me he's unbelievable. He's going to be the MVP conversation. Like, depending on what game you see, you could spin whatever you want out of that. So I wanted to talk about what's going on with the draft and the quarterbacks and everything. So the Bears traded the number one pick in the draft. They moved to 9. They got a second this year, a first next year, and a second the year after that, and DJ Moore, the wide receiver. So I think this is a great haul for the Bears. Now listen, obviously with any of these trades involving draft picks, it depends on, it's not about what picks you get. It's who you draft and how they play. Like that's what it comes down to. But as a starting point for the Bears, I think this is a hell of a job. They got Claypool last year. They got DJ Moore now. They have two or three legit wide receivers now. They have a good tight end. They have two good running backs. If they can get, like I was looking at the mock drafts, they're picking 9th. If they can get an offensive tackle in the draft, they're going to be in pretty good shape. Like they should be able to win a handful of games. I don't necessarily think it's a playoff team because the defense needs a lot of help.
Yeah.
Because they've traded away most of the guys. But it's as good. It's a good starting point. You get him a left tackle, receivers. He's already got running backs. You can make something out of this. Now, obviously, if Justin Fields doesn't progress as a quarterback, you'll be limited. But the Bears have so much to fix on their roster. I think they made the absolute right move. They're going to miss out on one of these really great defensive players. But there could be 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 5. So there might be, you never know who might be available when the Bears actually show up at 9. And there's more time. Maybe the Bears could move up a couple spots. You never know.
Yeah.
So you agree with that? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what you need. You got a lot of holes, so you need to kind of fill them. And for the people that are like, oh, well, they should move on from Justin Fields. It's like, I don't necessarily agree with that because how do you know how these guys in college are going to be? You this way you have a guy the second year in a system. You've given him some more weapons. It's like, okay, let's see what we got. And you're not paying him that much. So if you're bad again and you have a high draft pick, there's some really good quarterbacks coming out next year. So you could maybe draft one of them. So try to fill up some of the holes on the roster, and then see what you got, and see if you can actually ride with Justin Fields for a few more years. So.
Yeah, I think there's no generational quarterback to pick at number 1. If there was, they'd pick him, but it just isn't, which boggles my mind why Carolina would give up that much to get Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. I know people are talking differently. I know people are like, and it cracks me up that people are like, well, Bryce Young's the best quarterback. The only question is his size. Yeah,
that's just a tiny question. That's just a detail that's in the fine print. It really doesn't matter.
So let me break that down. Our only concern is that he might be injured and never be able to play. Other than that, he's great.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. What are we doing?
Let's see how that works out for him, Cotton. No, sorry. From Dodgeball,
Oh, yeah, right. Let's see how that works out for him.
Anything, Cotton? It's a bold strategy. Let's see how it works out for him.
Let me know how that works out. Look, so I'm about 50-50 on Bryce Young in Carolina. I don't think it's a great place for him to be, but I don't think it's terrible either. But they've given away both their wide receivers in the past year, so they got rid of both those guys. Like, I'm not sure where the offensive line is at. I like the offensive coach, though. I like Frank Reich being there, but it just comes down to, do you do what's necessary to protect him? And most teams don't really protect their quarterback very well because offensive line play is not great, and it just doesn't work very well. So we'll see. Looking at the the draft coming up, like, there could be 4 quarterbacks in the top 10. Maybe in the top 5.
Yeah.
Because, you got to think, Carolina's taking one at 1. Houston's taking one at 2. Indianapolis is probably taking one at 4. Seattle could take one at 5. You got Detroit in there. So I think, one of these teams is going to bite on Anthony Richardson. And the mock drafts now have Anthony Richardson ahead of Will Levis, which I don't have too much of a problem with. Both those guys are kind of projects. So I don't see a real issue with it. But I just think if it's me, none of these quarterbacks I think are great, so I would take C.J. Stroud because I think he's the safest bet. But who the hell knows? I think if Houston takes one of these quarterbacks, I think they're in big trouble because Houston's got a defensive coach. They got not a lot there. It's not a good organization. Like, I think it's going to be really difficult. We said that about Joe Burrow about the Bengals, but I think Joe Burrow is significantly better than these guys are.
Yeah. If you're really good, you can sort of overcome stuff. But
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing, just a real quick note on the Dolphins thing, like they had until May 1st to give Tua the 5th-year option. Why did they have to do it now? Why couldn't they have waited until after the draft, see how everything goes, and then if there's no deal to be had, okay, then give him the 5th-year option? Like, I feel like they kind of did it unnecessarily. You know, just I'm not sure what it shows other than we're not going to go after a real franchise quarterback.
I think they're trying to be like just totally all in on Tua for the second year in a row, just being like, nothing's going on, we're totally behind you, just, you know, keep working and get better, you know, whatever. I think it's probably something along those lines. But, you know, the other thing is that I'm kind of, and Mike Florio made this point, he's like, well, you know, McDaniel just thinks that, you know, Tua is just perfect for running his offense. And I'm like, okay, I mean, obviously that's part of it, but it's like you realize there's limitations to that, right? I mean, like, you know, it's like, yeah, he delivers the ball quickly on time. Yeah. And if the play doesn't work exactly right as it was planned, then he's screwed. Like, so, you know, I don't know. You know, anyway, that's we could spend all day on that, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I just find it a little strange that, you know, that's how they chose to do things, even though they've been super aggressive about all these other things, but this thing they just can't do it. Yeah. So, you know, let's go over some NBA stuff. I think the first thing I think is, you know, the Warriors beat Milwaukee yesterday or last night in Golden State.
Yeah.
So Giannis doesn't play. Like
Okay.
Yeah, Giannis doesn't play. I watched the game today. Milwaukee has an 8-point lead in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes to go. Okay. I mean, one thing I will say about Milwaukee is an issue that, you know, Chris Middleton is still not – he's not like Chris Middleton usually is. Drew Holiday's basically kind of – he was the guy they were going to at the end of the game. Chris Middleton kept getting the ball and falling down. And, you know, otherwise Milwaukee wins that game easily. So I'm not taking too much from that. I know everybody's going to go nuts because Curry was awesome. You know, even though Milwaukee's up 3 with 24 seconds to go, I don't know why they didn't foul, but, you know, they didn't do it. But I don't feel that that's an indicator that every game Golden State wins. Well, Golden State's back. It's like, yeah, I like the way Dante DiVincenzo's playing, but
they got crushed by Memphis. I mean, That was one of the worst losses in the time that Steve Kerr's been the coach. I mean, you know, they had a game. They lost to Oklahoma City, and at one point in the game, Draymond Green just quit while the game's going on because Jordan Poole wouldn't pass him the ball or something. So, like, yeah, like Colin's been saying, oh, they got their bench figured out. And what have they figured out? They figured out that they had to make a trade to play better on defense because they're awful on defense. Okay? Like, and they figured out their bench. They clearly haven't because they're so bad on the road. You know? And plus, I mean, look, Klay Thompson, he's not himself on defense. He's not what he used to be on defense. He's really come a long way on his offense. He's kind of getting back to what we're used to offensively. But, you know, I just don't. You know, they've always had size issues, but it's just like I heard Eddie House on The Odd Couple talking about this, and I've heard some other people sort of hint at it. There's some issues on that team. You know, Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole, and obviously they have more young players playing, and they're struggling on the road. So I think there's a lot. There's been some injuries. Obviously, they didn't hold on to Gary Payton Jr. after the last offseason, which they kind of realized was a mistake, which is why they went back and got him, and they moved off James Wiseman. But they've clearly got some issues, and we're too late in the season to go, oh, they'll just figure this out. No, they have some problems. Okay, they've got some serious problems at the core of the team that you don't just fix, you know, on the fly. And Rick Bucher was pointing this out. He's like, well, you know, they have such a home court advantage, which, yeah, they do, but they weren't this bad on the road last year. What the hell changed? What do you know? So, yeah, I think there's, and I hate playing psychologist. I don't really know, but it feels like there's something going on other than the fact that just X's and O's wise they have problems.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be like a major fissure in the team, right? It took a lot out of them to win that title last year. Last year was like the "we'll show you" title, right? It was like everybody's doubting us. Everybody says we're no good. We can't do it anymore. We're going to stick it to everybody. And this season, they haven't come in with the same energy, right? You got the Draymond Green, Jordan Poole thing happens. The young players are underachieving.
Wiggins has been out.
Right. And so here's my well, first of all, I have a couple of Warriors predictions. Number one, this isn't a prediction, but you can't tell me that you think the Lakers could be dangerous and then not believe in the Warriors. If you're telling me you believe in the Lakers, then you have to believe in the Warriors too. You can't just cherry pick. You can't go, oh well, this team could be dangerous when there's no evidence of that. Okay, and then try to tell me like Nick Wright's take about the Lakers could be dangerous and the Warriors are done. Like it can't be both. You can't sit there. Don't give me that crap because neither team to me neither team's a contender. But you certainly can't pick one or the other. It's got to be both.
Right.
So that's number one. What I think is going to happen with the Warriors is, okay, we're going to get right a week before the playoffs, and they're going to have Wiggins and Peyton playing, and they're going to be trying to figure this thing out going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is they're going to play the first series they play. The Warriors are going to win one of the first two games. They're either going to win game one. Now, my feeling is they probably lose game one, and then win game two. So they'll win one of the first two games.
Because right now they're the 7th seed.
It depends. Yeah. So whatever it is, they'll win one of the first two games convincingly. And when they do that, everybody will go, see? Here they come. They're back. Get everybody watch out for the Warriors. But we'll get to about game 4, game 5, and everyone will be like, oh, yeah, they're done. Yeah, this is over. Yeah, this team is not legit. We're going to see it in the first series. People will continue to support them, and this is the problem with the rings thing is we stop looking at things objectively anymore, and all we see is they're champions, so therefore champions can always figure it out, even though they very rarely do, especially at this stage when teams get to this point. It's really, really hard to continue to push through that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's
my 2
cents.
I'll add to that is there's just, look, it's kind of like you said about the rings thing. It's like, look, I'm not sitting here saying that the Warriors aren't contenders and they're not going to win a championship because I don't like them or because I'm just trying to be right. Okay? You have evidence smacking you in the face all year long about major problems with the team. I'm not making this up. And by the way, 2 things can be true. There can be major problems with this team, and I can also give them credit for the run that they've had the last 8 years, winning 4 titles, keep making the finals, Curry winning the 2 MVPs. Like, they've been amazing, and they've accomplished a lot. They're a smart organization. All that's true. But this year, come on. Just watch the team. Come on. You can't, if you still think they can win the championship, okay, fine. But you have to couch that with, they have some problems they need to figure out ASAP because we're running out of time. The season's almost over. Okay? You can't just go, oh, well, because of this and this and that, because of the sweat equity and all that they've accomplished, I'm just going to go, oh, well, they're going to win. When you have to look at the evidence that's there. I'm just so, like, the one take that's really annoyed the shit out of me is when Colin Cowherd's like, well, if you wanted to get the Warriors, you should have gotten them last year. And I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what, I was looking at it last year. I'm like, so Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson are not going to get a year older next year? They're not going to get 2 years older 2 years from now? Like, what the fuck are you talking? It's like these young players are going to be the leaders on the team. What evidence have you seen of that? Like, what?
Right. No, the idea before the season was they should be better because they're deeper, right? They should be better in the regular season because they're deeper. Right, and that was a fair argument to make. I didn't see anything wrong with that at the time. None of these guys have panned out. Like, it's nice that DiVincenzo now is giving him some minutes and able to play, and most of the guys that they come in and play well are wings or guards, right? They don't really have a lot of forwards or big guys, where they're going to run into problems against certain teams in the West.
Right.
So, it didn't work out with Wiseman. Moody's barely playing. Kuminga is going to play sparingly in the playoff minutes, which is why they got Gary Payton. So yeah, there's just a lot of issues that I just see it as too difficult for them to overcome.
That's
even a team
right. Go ahead.
like that. And listen, Draymond was getting benched in the finals.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a team that's on the rise. That's where I think
I said
people
last
lost
year.
it.
I was like, their championship window was last year and this year, and I might have been a year too late. Like, they're not going. You don't just all of a sudden get better after all the minutes that those guys have played. Like, it's just, I'm not hating on them, and I'm not just sitting there trying to be right. It's just like the evidence is on what I'm arguing. The evidence is not, they'll just overcome it. Like,
yeah. So, all right. So, give you my. So this is my overwhelm. I've been talking about this. I feel that people are selling the Denver Nuggets short, and we're using no evidence at all to basically say no. You can't trust them in the postseason. Well, I was told you couldn't trust Milwaukee in the postseason until they went through everybody and won the fucking title. So I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of this. So, all right. So let's break this down. Ready? This is the Western Conference. The Pelicans don't have Zion Williamson, and they might not make the playoffs. The Lakers are old and injured, and they probably will be in the play-in. Dallas plays no defense. Yeah. Minnesota is trying to win with two centers. Good luck.
Oh, and also remember in the playoffs last year, people were getting pissed off because they just played really stupid. They just did stupid stuff in the playoffs. I mean, talk about a team that you can't trust in the playoffs.
Right. Not to mention the Karl Anthony Towns factor. The Warriors are just not consistent or good enough on defense. The Clippers have been a mess with Westbrook. And again, this is a team that for some reason, and the Clippers are one of those teams that are trying to figure out the continuity issues on the fly. And so we're going to get to the playoffs, and it's like, do you guys know who your best lineups are yet? It's like, Phoenix can't keep Durant healthy, and Chris Paul's probably going to get hurt too. Memphis is completely falling off the rails. Now, by the way, not just because of the Ja Morant situation. This shit was happening the whole season. Everybody who covered the team, anybody who talked about the team was like, Memphis needs an adult. They need more veterans. They're too immature. Dylan Brooks is a freaking idiot. Dylan Brooks has 15 technicals this year. Okay? Dylan Brooks is, doing all kinds of dumb shit. They lost Brandon Clark for the year. Ja Morant's suspended. We don't know when or if he's going to be back. Okay? And Sacramento has no experience. Okay? Denver, they have playoff experience with their core guys, right? They went to the conference finals in the bubble. I know the bubble doesn't count, but it did happen. Okay? So Jamal Murray, Jokic, Porter, they all have experience on this team in the playoffs. They've got Bruce Brown, Reggie Jackson, also have playoff experience. Okay? Yeah. The only team, the two best players, Jokic and Murray, have been awesome every time they played in the playoffs. They've been awesome. In the bubble, Jamal Murray had a 50-point game, was lighting up the Lakers. This is ridiculous to think that they can't do this. I think the Clippers are capable because Denver is not great on defense. They're good, but not great because Jokic is not a great defensive player. Yeah. The Clippers, to me, are the only team capable of playing the kind of defense you're going to need to play specifically to beat Denver. But Denver has owned them. Since the bubble, Denver beats them almost every time. So whatever the Clippers are doing, it ain't working. So I just feel like everybody else is going to have all these takes about all these other teams, and we're going to go crazy. We're going crazy about the Stars and Phoenix and Golden State, and look out for this team, and you can't trust Denver. I'm going to be laughing at everybody when Denver's in the finals in June. That's all I'm going to say. Because look at the Western Conference. Listen to everything I just said. It's all true. I didn't make any of that stuff up. I wasn't fabricating anything. Those are all issues that all of those teams have. And if we're talking about the Western Conference right now, which everyone's saying is wide open, Denver has the fewest issues. Denver has the most things I can count on.
Yeah. I don't think I can really add anything to that. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but, Denver making at least the conference finals would not surprise me. And like I've been saying about Phoenix, even if Kevin Durant didn't get hurt, I just don't, are you guys going to be able to play enough defense and figure enough of this out before the playoffs start? Now Durant's going to be out. So, and again, as you said, Chris Paul he's probably going to get hurt. And Chris Paul's older now. He just doesn't have, this is not the Chris Paul from 4 years ago. So, yeah, I just, yeah.
Denver's the best bet. Like, you guys can fool around with all this other stuff. And not only, and by the way, Denver's not even the betting favorite in the Western Conference. So, I'm sorry, Denver's the bet, guys. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, and I know I'm not saying Jokic is the best player ever, but Jokic gets the absolute most out of that team. I think they need, they do need Porter to, Michael Porter Jr. to kind of show up in these games and be able to guard somebody, because they're going to need him offensively, in these series. But I think Denver's positioned the best. I wanted to talk about, before we get out of here, I wanted to talk about Ja Morant a little bit. As I was talking about Memphis before, the Memphis Grizzlies have been sliding off the rails the whole season. This is not just all of the sudden Ja Morant shows up with a gun and now this is a problem. This team's been a problem the entire time. Like, there are stories out there that Steven Adams has been trying to tell these guys to stop going out on the road, stop messing around, take this shit seriously, and it's not happening. There's all kinds of rumors and stories about Ja Morant's mother, was at a store and somebody giving her a hard time, and Ja Morant showed up with his posse, and there's all kinds of stuff all kinds of rumors. I don't know what's true and what's not. All I can tell you is the vibe around Memphis is not good. And it's been that way the whole season, and I'm not surprised that this thing with Ja Morant happened, because of how lackadaisical everybody's been about it and unprofessional this team has acted. And as Rick Bucher was saying, the problem with Memphis is they're going to kowtow to Ja Morant. And if they don't hold him accountable at some point, this is going to be a problem, because this is a bunch of young guys, and they've got, at some point, Memphis has got to make some kind of trade for some major veteran player that can help them. Because like you're seeing it now, the downside of having all these young guys like that is they're immature and there's nobody there to tell them to grow up.
Well, and I heard this take from, was it Bucher? I don't know who it was, but he was just someone was pointing out that smaller market teams tend to do this, where they just let the star players do whatever they want because they don't want them to leave because they're a small market. So, which has some truth to it. I don't know how true that is in this situation, but that does, that does seem to, and yeah, these are things that maybe people don't talk about as much, but yeah, this is that's a really big deal if guys on the team just are immature and they're going out all the time, and they're like, Ja Morant was like, oh, we're fine in the West. Remember that quote from earlier in the year? It's just like, what are you doing? Like, don't, like, no one else says anything. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's just a bet. And by the way, I hope he figures stuff out and whatever, and he doesn't do anything like that thing with the gun again. But then you just mentioned the thing about him showing up with his posse. Like, what is this?
Yeah,
what the fuck?
There's a story about he had some 17-year-old kid over to play basketball with him at his house, and they got into some kind of argument, or there was some kind of dispute. There's a story about he's sitting there with a laser pointer pointing it at another team. They're playing the Pacers, and he's pointing a laser pointer at guys to try to make it look like, somebody's got a gun on somebody. Like, it's there's the stories coming out of there. I don't know what's true and what's not. I'm not saying that this happened. I don't know. I'm just saying this is what's being talked about, what you can read on the internet, and it all does not sound good at all. And I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA investigated and said, you know what, you're suspended. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I think the team has done the right thing and said, we're just going to send you away for a while. But yeah. That being said, you can't. I don't see any possible way you could try to tell me Memphis is going to be a serious contender in the playoffs. It's just, this is way too hard to figure out. And when you have immaturity issues like that, and we've seen it through the season, the argument with Shannon Sharp.
Yeah, what is that?
It's immature, just dumb stuff that veteran teams that are well coached and well managed would never do. And so I hope I hope they figure it out. I hope for, I'm glad nothing bad happened to Ja, and I'm glad that, that nothing, nobody got hurt. But, hopefully this is a wake-up call for them. Yeah. Anyway, so that's all we got for today. Thanks for tuning in. That was a lot of fun. And look forward to next week. NFL free agency starts on Wednesday, or I think you can negotiate starting on Wednesday. So that ought to be a free for all. It always is the last few years anyway. So, all right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe.